are exploding, and the use of cutting-edge technology is really quite amazing. One to watch, and hopefully one that we can report on in future streams and shows. Now, don't forget, I'm going to remind you constantly, we love to hear from you on social media, so use the hashtag DisruptiveLive, Cloud Expo Asia, or CEAHK, or message us directly at DisruptiveLive or on our Facebook page. And without further ado, I have our next guest. I'm particularly pleased to welcome Omar Wilson. Hello, Omar.
Hello.
Now, you're Head of Marketing Asia Pacific for Digital Realty,
That's
aren't
right,
you?
yes.
Now, hi. Cloud
What
Show.
a venue, hey?
This is pretty cool, pretty cool.
Pretty busy,
yeah.
which is good.
Now, before we dive in, why don't you just tell me a little bit about yourself and Digital Realty?
Sure, yeah, so we're, let me start with the company. So we're the largest, by sheer size, owner and operator of data centers in the world. So San Francisco HQ'd, 205 data centers around the world. Predominantly about 70% is still North America, another 18-20% in EMEA. It's mainly European, so London, Paris, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Dublin, and then the remainder around 10% in Asia Pacific, which is the region I look after. But I moved to head up marketing here in 2015, and so you're following yourselves still closely from this region. And a call out to Mr. Dan Thomas as well, who I worked very early on with back in London, and I always knew he would do great things, and he obviously has. So yeah, that's me. So I moved over to Singapore in 2015. Previously 3-4 years in London with digital as well.
Now, you mentioned that Asia Pacific accounts for maybe 10% of your market, but what's it look like from a growth perspective? I mean, is this an exploding market?
Yes, very good question. It's 10% or so of the total annual rent for us, which are big numbers. So we're $30+ billion market cap. So we're talking very big numbers. But it's also the fastest growing region for us, which is exciting, both in terms of growth within the region, but then also now, which is exciting our North American colleagues a lot, is the Chinese operators coming out of the region, mainly Chinese, as you can imagine. Technology cloud predominantly coming out to West Coast, East Coast US, European markets, and other markets in Asia. So huge growth.
You're the second person today to make that point, that actually the trade is starting to go in two directions now.
Yes.
That the operators within Asia Pacific are now looking to expand into other markets themselves.
Very much so, yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of data centers, I mean, it's a lot of investment, it's a lot of build, it's quite a lot to do. So when you're planning, you've got to be looking ahead, haven't you?
Yes,
Now, one of the notes I've got on my sheet in front of me is the future of data centers and artificial intelligence.
Yes.
So talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely what you said around the investment is 100% right. You're talking hundreds of millions of dollars of investment, both in terms of obviously acquiring the land, generally, which we look to own, or get a very long lease hold in countries which we can't own. And then obviously the infrastructure is quite high-tech infrastructure. So you're talking, ship-sized generators, massive cooling infrastructure, and then obviously the kit within the buildings is very expensive. So if you look at our Singapore data center, which is 6 to 7 floors, because in Asia you have to build up generally because land is difficult.
Well, Singapore, Hong Kong.
Yeah. So Australia is the only place which you can really do campus-style builds, or maybe Osaka, Tokyo even, it's hard. But our Singapore West data center, we estimated is $1.5 billion worth of building, including everything inside, all the kit. We just did a rough estimate, and you're talking a $1.5 billion physical building. So these are how valuable they are. And into the future, it's quite exciting because we're still the infrastructure layer, so our customers are generally much more famous than we are, the ones we can talk about. But I find it very exciting because everything that's going to happen around AI, robotics, machine learning.
The resource far enough, that future planning
Yes, I mean,
aspect.
You're absolutely right. So with the cloud customers of ours, it's really a matter of how quickly they can get their product to market. So for them, it's really speed. Within a specific geography, the first mover advantage is so great for the large cloud guys. They just need space in certain geographies quickly. With some other customers, it's interesting. We're probably 2 or 3 layers removed. So we're actually looking at what their customers are doing.
The number of abstraction layers.
Exactly,
I mean, cloud by default is a huge abstraction layer.
And you're looking 2, 3 layers down. And for that, we track interesting items like mobile usage. South Asia is very interesting for us. And some of the markets we're not yet in are very interesting. So we track very much the usage within the likes of Indonesia. Massive, 260 million population, 100 million or so internet users. Likewise, Malaysia, Thailand. At the moment, predominantly being serviced out of Singapore as a hub, and then Hong Kong for China and Northern Asia. But eventually, these data centers, maybe not the big ones, but micro and mid-sized data centers are going to appear
as you
all
push
over
out
the globe.
towards the edge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these emerging markets, the other aspect you have to deal with, of course, is connectivity.
Yes.
So when you're looking to expand your footprint, do you follow the connectivity, or does the connectivity follow you? I mean, I'm learning so much about the actual data center fundamental infrastructure.
The connectivity is key. We coin, or others have coined, and we also use the term the modern digital Silk Road, and that's being driven by these subsea cables. And it's interesting historically, if you look at places like Hong Kong and Singapore, their historical trading routes, and the modern commodity is really data. So you find them also very well accustomed to data center hubs. So for Asia, the 2 large hubs are still Hong Kong and Singapore. And it's because of that region. One, where they're geographically placed, and then 2, because of the amount of connectivity and cables they have coming in. So that's the development of that. So data centers really work side by side that. We're very conscious of where the landing stations, the cable landing stations are. So our new Eastern Singapore data center is very close to the landing station, and that just helps with latency for the sort of financial services type customers. But you find, you'll read a lot around the social media and the cloud and the tech giants, even now laying their own subsea cables.
Yeah.
Just because they're so conscious of the amount of data usage they need and data they're going to transfer. They really want that advantage to just own the cable, despite the millions or hundreds of millions, obviously, that's going to cost them to lay. Massive advantage. So that's interesting. And then once we move to 5G, obviously, it's going to be additional interesting point around how that impacts data center usage and location as well. So.
Right. Well, I mean, there's so much going on at this expo. There's even a separate room that's filled with some of the large equipment that you mentioned that sits in data centers like yours. How have you found the show? Are there a lot of familiar faces? Are there new faces? Are you getting value out of being here?
Very much so. I think for us it's interesting because a lot of the sponsors, or the largest sponsors, are also customers of ours. So we find ourselves quite neatly positioned in between, and predominantly there are obviously the large US operators, but a lot of the Asian telco and cloud leaders are here. So it's people we have discussions with, or definitely want to grow discussions with. And I think it shows the level of cloud growth. You've got pretty much everybody playing in that space. And interestingly here, you'll see how it's not just the household names, the Western household names anymore. It's very much the regional growth speed of these providers coming from predominantly China, but others as well, and coming out. You feel that very strongly here when you just need to go and see the size of their stands and the activity they have on there. It's pretty impressive.
Well, I think there's certainly a phrase that's been coined today, and that is the same but different.
Yes.
And it feels very similar to when we go to events in Europe or the US. But as you mentioned, there are different names here that are at a scale that's huge. that aren't household names, certainly in various other regions around the world.
Well, I think it's an interesting, there's a great quote the other day, which I reuse quite a lot, that if you were growing up in the 19th century, you generally look to London or the UK or that side of the world to project growth. If you're in the 20th century, you would look to New York or Washington. I think 21st is very much going to be the Chinese cities. And that's what we're feeling here. Is even in AI development, it's really starting to generate from this region.
The Chinese market seems to be way ahead on the use of certain types of artificial intelligence, especially computer vision, facial recognition, things like that.
Yes.
Been reporting a huge amount on the capabilities coming out of China. Now, I've also got to ask, a lot of companies, some big Western names, have had challenges getting into the Chinese market and being able to set up data centers in that space. Do you see that as a challenge or an opportunity? Do you think digital realty is going to be moving into China, or are you going to be working with partners around where you are?
I think there's no getting away. It's a more challenging market to enter in our world. I mean, I think you look at Western companies in general have been operating there for many years now, so manufacturing, obviously. But even recently, if you look at what Apple's doing there, you're seeing the technology companies now starting to be a bit more active with their data center activity there. So I think that was quite a big move for the world to see that happen. I think it's changing very quickly. I think I'd make that point. We were in Shanghai last year, and we ran an event with local CDNs and SDNs. Really, we're looking for the outbound because our data centers are obviously here and the rest of Asia and the world. So we're really looking for the outbound. But we went to Shanghai, and the level of discussion and what they're trying to do there is, not dissimilar to a London event or a New York event or San Francisco event, in my view. So it's very much more advanced than I think we know or think about. I think the challenges will, over time, alleviate slowly. I think anybody going in, there's no getting away that you're going to have to partner with somebody. So finding the right partner is key. We do that anyway. There's a number of companies that do some excellent network gateways in and out of China, which is essential. But I think our world, again, if you look at us as a real estate landowner, it's quite a specific industry. So I think we would never not look at China. I think we're always looking at China. But whether and how we enter is still something for the slighter long term, I think, mid to long term.
No, I'm always amazed by that simple fact that the entire digital economy and all of these services that we see and rely on, and the services that we see coming just around the corner, rely on these assets, these data centers, to deliver those services. And it actually is really quite small, despite the fact that hundreds of billions of dollars are poured into it to make all this work.
Very much so. And it's not slowing down in any, I mean, just on the demand we're seeing. And it's logical if you consider there's 4 billion or so internet users today. You're looking at another 2-3 billion to come online. I mean, China alone gets another 100 million internet users every year. So I mean, which is
crazy numbers,
almost double the UK population coming online every year.
Every year.
So they're using video, and they're skipping the whole middle generation. So they're going straight to mobile banking. A huge amount of video streaming and usage, as you can imagine, in China. WeChat's on billions of messages a day during peak times. So the reason China will lead on AI as well is because they're sitting on the most data that anybody really can. That's why the likes of the Googles, Microsofts, they're very advanced in AI and machine learning because they've got access to huge amounts of data. If you can imagine that within a specific country environment, that is China. That's why they're so advanced on facial technology. That's why they'll take a leap on AI, in my view, eventually. I think US is still a huge hub of innovation, but they just got the raw data, so they can really test and learn.
I'm completely blown away. I knew some of the stuff before coming here, but just in this morning session and interviewing people this afternoon, including yourself, it's a real eye-opener. Omar, I wish we had more time.
Very good to meet you.
Lovely to meet you, and thank you so much for coming on the stream.
Likewise.
And telling me all about, and our audience, all about digital realty.
Enjoy the rest of the show.
And what you're doing here in Asia.
To Dan and the UK team.
He will get the message, I promise. Thank you, Omar.
Thank you very much. All the best. Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the show. wow. As I said, it's quite amazing, some of the figures and facts about not only the Chinese market, but the broader Asia-Pacific market, the rate at which it's growing. I mean, China alone adding 100 million users, internet users every year. And you think about the infrastructure and the resources that have to be in place to make that happen. It's just amazing. But it is time to move on to our next